What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Lions video. Now, over the offseason, the Detroit Lions have changed a ton. The Lions, as of right now, going into OTAs, look drastically different than they did to end the 2020 season with a loss to the Minnesota Vikings in Week 17. However, just because the Lions look different this year does not mean that they are going to be worse. The media has this viewpoint on the Detroit Lions and is trying to convince everybody that just because the Lions look very different this year, and just because they have different talent in the building, that they're going to be significantly worse than a season ago. And today I want to talk about this way of thinking, and I wanted to look at it from this viewpoint. Talk about the Detroit Lions, talk about the changes that they have made, and talk about, are they really a worse football team just because some of the changes and some of the players and coaches in the building are new, inexperienced, or just haven't played here yet. Now, before we get into the video and before we get to talking about this, if you're new to the channel and you are enjoying the content, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes 2 seconds out of your day to do so. It's quick, it's free, and it's easy. It only takes 2 seconds, as I said, so if you could be so kind as to hit the like and subscribe button, I'd be greatly appreciative for it. With all that being said, without any further ado, let's get into talking about this Detroit Lions team, the differences that they have going into 2021, and whether or not they're actually a worse football team or as bad of a football team as many would have you believe. Now, as I said, the media is taking the Detroit Lions changes this year, taking some of the inexperience of some of the coaches, taking the fact that these Lions have not played in Detroit yet, and they are associating it with being regression. They are associating these changes with negativity and assuming that just because these players are not the same players, that they are then worse players. And that is not necessarily the case for anybody or everybody in this Lions organization. Starting off with the new coaching, because coaching is a big part of the NFL, and the Lions coaching staff this year is significantly different than what we saw a season ago to either start or end the season. Now, of course, the big time coach this year, the big time change at head coach was Dan Campbell, got a 6-year contract to come in and replace Matt Patricia. And even in his short time as the Lions head coach, he has shown more competence than Matt Patricia ever did. Him and Brad Holmes have shown more competence, they have shown more knowledge of the game, and they have shown better things just through press conferences than what Matt Patricia has ever shown. And of course, although it is early in the process, although the Lions have not coached a game yet, although Dan Campbell has not coached a game in the Honolulu Blue, I can pretty safely say that Dan Campbell is a better coach than Matt Patricia. From a personality standpoint, from getting players to work hard, from getting players to play hard, from a mentality standpoint, from a schematic standpoint, really every single way you look at this, Dan Campbell is an improvement over Matt Patricia. I think you could say a similar thing about Anthony Lynn. Darrell Bevell last year was one of our better coordinators and one of our better coaches, but even he had some flaws. Anthony Lynn is an experienced guy, a former head coach and a former offensive coordinator that has a scheme that works, that has been very, very successful on the offensive side of the ball pretty much since he entered the NFL. I don't think the upgrade is as significant at OC as it is from head coach. I don't think the upgrade from Darrell Bevell to Anthony Lynn is as significant as Matt Patricia to Dan Campbell, but I think the improvement is still there. Anthony Lynn, an experienced coach, a guy that's been through a lot, a guy that's played for multiple schemes, multiple systems, guy that has played as both a player and has coached through multiple teams as a offensive coordinator and a head coach. He has experience in the NFL. I think he is an upgrade over Darrell Bevell, even if it is just a slight one. And then Aaron Glenn is also better than Corey Unlin. They were both in the same situation last year. Corey Unlin was a first-year defensive coordinator, and the hire didn't make a lot of sense. This year, Aaron Glenn is a first-time offensive coordinator, but he has a far more proven track record of developing cornerbacks, developing safeties, developing secondaries in general, having his secondaries play well, and having a defensive scheme that actually works. Aaron Glenn is a far better upgrade and is way, way better than what we got in Corey Unlin a season ago. So from all the 3 major positions, being head coach, all OC, and DC, you have an upgrade at all 3 coaching positions, even if 2 of the 3 are relatively inexperienced at their current role. Not to mention Deuce Staley and Mark DeLone and Aubrey Pleasant and Todd Wash are all upgraded coaches at their respective positions. Aubrey Aubrey Pleasant is an upgrade at secondaries coordinator. Todd Walsh is an upgrade at defensive line coach. Mark DeLone is an upgrade at our linebackers coach, and Deuce Staley is a far upgrade and a far better coach than what we had at our running backs coach a season ago. So with that being said, the Lions coaching staff, although it is new, it is different, and some of them are not super experienced in their current role, they are a better coaching staff, at least on paper, than what you saw with Matt Patricia's system, what you saw with Matt Patricia's scheme, and what you saw in his staff a season ago. Now, you can make the argument that the special teams coordinator regressed a little bit. Of course, Braden Coombs, one of the better special teams coordinators in the NFL, had that special teams popping, had them being a very, very good top of the NFL-esque unit. I don't know if they're going to be that this year. Their new special teams coordinator is far from bad. He's still very good at his job. I think the special teams may take a step back next season, but I think it should still be a top 10, top 15 unit just based off of talent and based off of coaching alone. That coach, the special teams coordinator, may have regressed a little bit as far as from a coaching standpoint, but it is still very good. And then the other coach that I think you can maybe make the argument that regressed is the wide receiver coach, because Robert Prince is very good at his job. Robert Prince does coach wide receivers very well. You could say that was a downgrade, but Antoine Randall El, being a former wide receiver and working as an offensive assistant for the Buccaneers, primarily with their wide receivers, does have experience coaching there and should be a fine and good enough. It should be a good enough wide receivers coach to get this wide receiver core moving and get them to make some plays in the regular season. So if this coaching staff is not the problem, if the inexperience, if the changes that coaching staff are better than what we had a season ago, then maybe the quarterback change is the reason that the Lions are projected to finish, basically at a ceiling of 3 wins. That's what the media and that's what a lot of people are giving them right now, is a ceiling of like 3 to 4 football games. As being the victors of 3 to 4 football games, that's kind of the ceiling that the media has given them. So if it's not the coach's fault, the coaches are improved from last year, maybe it's the quarterback trade, maybe it's the flop at quarterback from Jared Goff, or from Stafford to Jared Goff. And admittedly, Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Matthew Stafford is a borderline top 10 quarterback, whereas Jared Goff is probably closer to that 15 to 20 range, but no worse than 20 on his worst days. Jared Goff is a top 20 quarterback, and you can win football games with a top 20 quarterback. Last year for the Los Angeles Rams, Jared Goff had a 9-6 record as a starter, having a 67% completion percentage, which was the highest of his career, passing for 3,952 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. Now, you might say that's not the greatest season by a quarterback, but at the same time, like I said, he won football games, so we know that you can win with Jared Goff in the right system and in the right circumstance. He had the highest completion percentage of his career, which means he is developing a little better. He is growing as a player. He's not throwing as many risky passes, and maybe he's being a little bit more careful, a little bit more comfortable, and being a little bit safer with the football, with a higher completion percentage than what we saw in any of his other years in LA. 3,952 passing yards is not incredible. It's not elite numbers, but he was on pace to pass for 4,000 yards. The 20 touchdowns, you'd like to see a little bit more, and the interceptions, you'd like to see a little bit less, but overall, not a bad season by Jared Goff just a year ago, with not a great offensive line and really not great surrounding talent around him. Jared Goff, it's not like he was carried by the Rams offensive talent. Sean McVay, very good play caller, but the talent around Jared Goff on that Rams offense is good, but it's not great. It's not elite talent, right? They had 2 running backs that, it's good, but it's not great talent. Jared Goff, at least on the Rams last year, he wasn't carried by the offensive talent on the Rams. They were not a run-first offense necessarily. The Rams had 473 rush attempts to Jared Goff's 552 pass attempts. Neither running back that got significant carries on the season last year passed 650 yards for the Rams, and they didn't have a top wide receiver last year. No wide receiver topped 1,000 yards, and no wide receiver was really a true big-time dominant wide receiver. He didn't have a DeAndre Hopkins, didn't have a Julio Jones, didn't have, a Devontae Adams or a Megatron Johnson. He didn't have an elite wide receiver, didn't have an elite running back, and didn't have an elite offensive line around him. So if you're making the argument that, he gets carried by the Rams, who was carrying him? Sean McVay is a solid coach. He's a good coach, but his scheme got figured out a couple of years ago, and although he's still one of the better coaches, his scheme, his play calling is not unstoppable as it seemingly was a couple of years ago. His running backs were good. They averaged, I believe, 4.3 and 4.5 yards per carry respectively. That's good. That's not great. Their offensive line was old and damaged goods and didn't really play all that well. the Lions offensive line right now is better than what the Rams had. The Lions running back core, maybe not as deep as the Rams, but DeAndre Swift is better than anybody on the Rams right now. And that wide receiver core for the Detroit Lions this year may not be great, but there's nobody special on the Rams receiving core either. Speaking of that wide receiver core, a lot of people are making the argument that both Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones and Jamal Agnew and Mohamed Sanu and Danny Amendola, all 5 of those players are gone. Really, your top 5 wide receivers at the position are gone and they're no longer on the team. But people fail to realize that 3 of our top 5 receivers a season ago are all returning. Both TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, and Quintez Cephas were 3 of our top 5 wide receivers a season ago, or 3 of our top 5 receiving threats as far as yards and touchdowns. TJ Hawkinson was 2nd on the team in receiving yards. DeAndre Swift was 4th and Quintez Cephas was 5th. Kenny Galladay was 6th. Kenny Galladay did not have a great season a year ago, so you may make the argument, yeah, Kenny Galladay is not here anymore. He wasn't there last year either. He didn't have a big impact on the season a year ago. So why losing an injured player? Why losing a player that didn't play for you a season ago? Why is that such a big impact for the media? Why is that such a big impact for this Lions team that's going to be so devastating for this franchise? They didn't play with him a season ago, so why is him leaving the team any different than him being on the sideline, being on the bench for 11, 12, 13 weeks of the NFL season? You know, Marvin Jones was our leading receiver a season ago, and he's very good. He's a starting caliber wide receiver and would be the number 1 wide receiver this year on the Detroit Lions if he elected to stay. But he didn't. Marvin Jones did not elect to stay, and last year had a good season, had 978 yards and 9 touchdowns, should have had 1,000 yards of a couple catches had gone his way if he didn't get screwed in Green Bay, didn't get screwed versus Minnesota that last week. He would have had 1,000 yards, probably 11 touchdowns, 10 to 11 touchdowns. Very good season, but Tyrell Williams is bigger, he's faster, and he's stronger than Marvin Jones, and in the only season that Tyrell Williams had 70 plus targets, which is what Marvin Jones had a season ago as our wide receiver 1 primarily, he had 1,000-yard season. So with that being said, this wide receiver core isn't that much worse than what we had a season ago. Are they worse? Probably. Talent-wise, are the Detroit Lions a better receiving core now than in the 2020 early season? No, they're not. Kenny Galladay would be the best wide receiver on this roster, no doubt, but he didn't play a season ago, so losing him isn't as big of a factor as I think a lot of people are making it out to be. Losing Marvin Jones is big, but Tyrell Williams can do anything that you ask Marvin Jones to do and can do it at just as an effective and just as consistent basis as what you were asking Marvin Jones to do. Mohamed Sanu came in the last couple weeks of the season, looked really solid, but wasn't a big time contributor, wasn't the biggest time member, and didn't make a ton of plays that I was like, man, Quintez couldn't have made that play, or Brashad Perryman couldn't have made that play, or this guy or that guy on the Lions roster couldn't have made that play. Danny Amendola is the same way. He was an okay player. He's a fine wide receiver in the NFL. He didn't do anything that Quintez Cephas can't do in the slot. He didn't do anything that Amon-Ra St. Brown can't do in the slot. You know, you have Jamal Agnew. He's more of a kick returner, punt returner than a wide receiver. I couldn't even tell you any real receptions that he had a season ago. I can't think off the top of my head a big play receiving threat or a big play down the field as a receiver that he made a season ago. So we're not having to replace all this elite talent and production from a year ago. The talent on paper would tell you that the Lions had a really good receiver core, but they led the league in drops or were 2nd in the league in drops. Kenny Galladay didn't play. Tyrell Williams can replace Marvin Jones. You know, you have Quintez Cephas and Amon-Ra St. Brown that can replace both Sanu and Amendola. And I mean, other than that, our wide receiver core isn't significantly worse than it was a season ago. Our wide receiver core right now, production-wise and talent-wise, really isn't that worse off than we were to end the 2020 season. Not to mention, if you look at the offensive line, we are significantly better offensive line than we were to end the 2020 season. Defensive line, we are significantly better now than we were at week 17. You have the secondary that has gotten some upgrades, including Quentin Dunbar and Corn Elder and Afedi Melifonwu. Jeff Okuda's coming back with those new coaches that should help him improve that much more and help everybody on the defense improve that much more. Why are the Lions a bad football team? Where are the Lions regressing so significantly that they're going to go from a 5-11 football team that was really underachieving a season ago to at best a 3-win football team? Where did the Detroit Lions regress, and what changed in the Detroit Lions to make them so much worse that they go from a playoff, or they go from a team that was underperforming at 5-11 to a team that would be lucky to get 3 wins on the season? It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not here to say the Lions are going to be Super Bowl contenders. I'm not here to say the Lions are even going to be playoff contenders or contenders for the division. But to say the Lions are going to have 3 wins because Kenny Golladay is gone is ridiculous. To say the Lions are going to have 3 wins because Matthew Stafford is that much better than Jared Goff is ridiculous. To say the Lions are going to have 3 wins because their coaches are inexperienced and worse than what they had a season ago is ridiculous. The Lions were a 5-11 team a season ago. Their coaches are better. Their quarterback is slightly worse, but you can still win with Jared Goff. Their wide receiving core is a little bit worse, but is good enough to win and is good enough to replace the production we had a season ago. Our offensive line and defensive line are significantly better. Our secondary is a little bit better, I would say. I would say our talent in the secondary is better than a season ago. Our linebackers are better than a season ago. And of course, they have a really good linebackers coach from the Bears to come in to train all of them to be that much better. So why? Answer me the question. If you were a Lions fan that thinks that this team is a 3-win football team at the max, or if you're just a fan in general that has heard the media say the Lions are going to be a horrible football team this year contending for the number 1 pick, why? Answer me, why are the Lions a bad football team? Why are the Detroit Lions a 3-win at best football team when a season ago they were a 5-win underachieving football team? Answer that question. Think about it and leave your answer down in the comments below. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Well, let me know what you think about this Lions team. Let me know how good you think they can be this year. Let me know if you disagree with what I'm saying. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I'd be very interested to hear where you guys stand on this situation and on this topic. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching the video. And until next time, and as always, as of course I always say, go Lions.